You disgust me.
Oh, right. Money. Money is what happened. Hello and welcome, one and all. I'm your host, Announcer of Games, and you may be asking, what the heck is this? Well, this is my brand new series, It's Dangerous to Go Alone, because you shouldn't be alone out there in the world. You should be listening to my voice, and only my voice. So, what are we going to listen to today? Well, there is a series that I've been wanting to talk about for a very, very long time. And since this is the beginning of my new series, why not talk about one of my favorite series of all time? Considering that it's getting a game on January 27th, this game is called Dead Space.
Open fire! Get the power! Get the... Come on! Violence.
Now, before you start getting worried and panicked that you just jumped into a lore video, don't worry, that's not this series. This series wants to explore what happened to the game series of Dead Space, what caused it to finally stop coming out, what happened to its developer, what did EA do that was so wrong that caused the game to go into hiatus for a couple of years. Well, I'm going to answer those questions one thing at a time. But first, let's get into a little bit of history about who made Dead Space.
Isaac, it's me.
But of course, in order to talk about Dead Space, we have to go back. Way back to 2004. You know, when a certain other game was making its rounds in the gaming industry. Resident Evil 4. You see, children, Resident Evil 4 wasn't just your standard run-of-the-mill survival horror game. It was the survival horror game of 2004. And at the time, the developers of Dead Space, EA Redwood Shores, basically saw what they were doing with their current game that they were making, and then looked at Resident Evil 4, and the developers basically said this: Resident Evil 4 basically killed their game, so they had to start all over to try and match what Resident Evil 4 was doing. So, this was the official start of the development of Dead Space 2008.
So that's Ishimura. Impressive.
The USG Ishimura. Biggest planet cracker in her class.
Luckily for EA Redshore, though, EA was looking for brand new IPs to try out, and Dead Space was something that EA was very, very interested in, especially with the ideas that EA Redshore had in mind.
Oh yes, feel the punch, feel the dismemberment, yes, yes, look at that crunch, children, oh, it goes flying so far, yes!
Dead Space's development would now take 4 years to get done, and during that time, the developers actually came out with some very, very interesting and fun ideas to try. For one, how to dispatch enemies. You see, children, in most zombie games, you just shoot the target. Target go boom. Target go splat. Blood everywhere. Good times for all. In Dead Space, you still shot the targets, but now you had to be more specific with your shots.
Collision detected in the main hangar bay. Emergency crews have been notified.
You gotta aim for the limbs. Back on topic. You see, children, this was going to be a very different survival horror game. You'd still have to collect supplies, you'd still have to manage ammo, but it was all slightly tweaked to be more user-friendly. For one, all information about your character and how they're doing, how your ammo count is, was all displayed on your back as well. Dead Space would hide nothing from the player.
Dear God.
There's more.
No.
Dead Space was all about seeing everything. Seeing how the world is, how it works, how the monsters react to your shots, how the monsters look. Everything. Dead Space was always front and center about what it was. a gory, vicious, brutal horror game. And with everything said and done, when it came out on its release day, Dead Space was a critical success, especially for a brand new horror IP. Everyone was more focused on Resident Evil and all these other horror games that had a past, but when Dead Space came out, it proved that new horror ideas were still in the works, and that they could work. Dead Space was a massive success, able to get 2 brand new sequels, Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3, along with DLC, and 2 animated movies, books, and... what the fuck is this? Oh god, EA, what did you do?
We've got to have.
You see, kids, there's a reason why EA has the reputation it has. Especially early 2010 EA. Ooh, boy. You see, kids, EA had a lot of faith in Dead Space. So much so that they made 2 animated films for it. Dead Space Downfall and Dead Space Aftermath.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that?
These were not financial hits as they were direct-to-DVD animated movies. One was a prologue for Dead Space, and the other one was a prologue for Dead Space 2. And to say the least of which, both of these things flopped hard. They were not financial moneymakers, and EA wasted a ton of money on these things. Which, granted, didn't hinder the budget for Dead Space 2 at all, but you can kind of see the cracks in the window already if EA is willing to waste this much money. And to say the least of which, this was a very, very bad omen for things to come.
But wait! There's more!
Okay, so EA lacked massive restraint when it came to advertising. They would just do these weird-ass advertising campaigns, like sending brass knuckles to media reviewers, or sending a box for Dante's Inferno with sinful $200 tickets and show us your sinful ways with booth babes. All of these decisions culminating inside the Your Mom is Going to Hate Dead Space ad campaign. Oh dear God, what is this?
Oh my God! Oh gosh! I think it'll make a person become insane.
This game is an atrocity.
It's revolting. It's violent. It's everything you love in a game. And your mom's gonna hate it.
Why would they even make something like this?
I don't know what the that was.
When you compare this to the advertising Dead Space 1 had, with its more somber tone, playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star in the background, this was a massive departure from what Dead Space was, especially since Dead Space 2 would try to mix action and horror. And though it succeeded, Dead Space 2 is the best-selling Dead Space game of all time, these problems would continue to mount, especially when it came to Dead Space 3. And oh boy! Dead Space 3 is a fucking character of a game. Let's get into it.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. Intel has told us there are at least 7.
Okay, I already see one. Give him. Okay.
They're the same picture.
So, you kids remember the Alien movies? You know, the first one's a horror classic, the second one's an action genre classic, and the third one... is the third one the black sheep?
Well, it spits acid. Don't stare into the abyss, Anne. After all, it stares back.
Yeah, no, the comparison has been made that Dead Space and Alien share the same kind of creative history. The first game being a horror classic, the second game being even better than the first as an action horror game, and then the third one falling off harder than I do, skateboarding. So, what the hell happened here? Well, for starters, we have to understand what the heck was going on at the time in the gaming industry, and where EA's head was when this game was in development.
How would you rate Billy as a caregiver?
Pretty good, I guess. Except that he's never remembered my birthday. Or paid child support. In fact, he usually just jabs me with a big stick. Ow!
I'll damn you good, you filthy bug!
Why won't you love me, Dad? I'll be anything you want me to be.
I want you to be dead!
You see, kids, the early 2010s can be summed up as everything must be Call of Duty, Battlefield, or Halo, or you are doomed to an existence of nothingness. This led EA leadership to forget what the hell their own IP was about. It was an alternative horror game, not an action shooter. But that's what EA executives demanded EA Red Shore Studios, now known as Visceral Games, to start doing. Make Dead Space into the other shooting games, while still keeping what Dead Space was. And that would be a very, very arduous process that gave us the mess that was Dead Space 3.
We need him. This mission needs him.
We need him or you need him?
You got something to say to me, Captain? Stop! Just stop!
Riveting! EA would start making more and more demands about the game, and to Visceral's credit, they tried to resist, but it comes down to do it or you're fired. And when it comes to getting a paycheck and feeding your family, to having creative control, a lot of people are going to choose to feed their family. And I can't fault Visceral for not having a spine in this one, because god damn it, it's their job and they have to listen to the higher-ups, even if those higher-ups are making horrible, horrible goddamn decisions when it comes to their own IP. And so, the ideas such as multiplayer, survival elements being put in microtransactions. God damn it, EA, you started it, you bastards, with this garbage!
Are you serious? This is torture. You're torturing me and everyone else watching.
Granted, these microtransactions only gave you resources, but they're still microtransactions at the end of the day, come on! Not to mention new enemies that do shoot at you, yes, but they might as well be just flicking you in the face with the amount of damage they do. The entire idea of Dead Space was turned on its head to accommodate these new enemies, because the entire idea of Dead Space was dismemberment to stop the enemies, and now you got regular street thugs just taking crack shots at you, and now the weapons have to change to compensate to that. Instead of far-flung energy weapons that are meant for dismemberment, you now have precision-based weapons, and these precision-based weapons make it very much harder to dismember targets. So, you have to now weaken the necromorphs to now make it evenly fair and easier to dismember targets. God damn it. Oh, never mind. I can just shoot necromorphs in the stomach to kill them. No, this is dumb. I'm killing them so easily. This shouldn't be happening. And with these changes, Dead Space's story would suffer because of it. Especially very, very unneeded changes. Hi, Ellie. Nice to see that our pilot from Dead Space 2 is back, and that she... She's no longer a badass pilot. She's just a damsel in distress in a love triangle. Gather round, one and all. See how I have gutted this entire game franchise just to give you basic-ass shooting mechanics and titties! Yes, that's right. I've added tits to your horror game. Ooh, this should sell plenty of units now, shouldn't it, EA? You know, because it worked so well the first goddamn time!
Here, please hit me as hard as you can.
Visceral Games, I am perfecting Dead Space 3.
night.
Don't hold back.
After everything was said and done, Dead Space 3 was the worst selling Dead Space game out of all three of them. And this failure, coupled with the fact that EA put the unreasonable expectation that Dead Space had to sell 6 million copies, that's more than the other two combined! What the hell, EA?
Stop it.
All of these problems stacked on top of one another, Visceral Games was shut down and its staff either put somewhere else or laid off. And that sucks. It sucks real bad. This was all EA's fault at the end of the day. And I understand that EA is a company. It has to do what it has to do to make money. But these were such ass-backwards decisions. Dead Space was a horror game, and horror games, although popular, do not sell as well as mainstream games like Call of Duty or Halo. And that is what they were trying to make a horror game. The next Call of Duty and Halo. When it was never meant to be that. Dead Space was popular not because of Call of Duty or Halo, but because it had its own unique identity. When I put the Dead Space suit anywhere else, people can tell where it comes from. They can say, oh, it's that game, Dead Space, right? Just by looking at the design and the armor, and the creatures in it. And Dead Space was very unique in that way. But that's kind of the curse of EA. It's not a matter of if they fuck up, but when they fuck up. And Dead Space was just a matter of when, not if. And Dead Space was never given a fair shake after Dead Space 3. The developers wanted to make Dead Space 4. In fact, the ideas for it, when you read interviews about it, is that it was going to go back to its survival horror roots, where you're a scavenger just jumping from ship to ship, trying to survive in a post-apocalyptic galaxy. And EA scrapped it, just like how they scrapped the original ideas for Dead Space 3. Yeah, fun fact about Dead Space 3, it wasn't supposed to be the game it was. In fact, the idea for it was that you were already on the planet that you were stuck on in Dead Space 3, and that though they would have to keep the multiplayer mechanics, the idea was that the second player would be a Shadow Isaac Clarke. And that Shadow Isaac Clarke would be responsible for a lot of the bad things happening in the game, making the first player question their own sanity when playing the game, as their friends are picked off, one by one, on a snowstorm planet where there's nothing but markers and you're running out of time. And that would have been 1,000 times more interesting than what we got with Dead Space 3 as it is now. Not saying Dead Space 3 is a bad game at all, it has a lot of problems with it, but you can still find some fun with it, and Visceral actually did manage to do what they wanted when it came to the finale of Dead Space 3's DLC, Awakening. And although the DLC ends on a cliffhanger ending because they were really gunning for Dead Space 4, they told the story that they wanted to tell at the end of the day. Dead Space as a universe is fascinating, how far it goes back, how far it keeps going, and the characters themselves are also very interesting. Isaac Clarke, Ellie Langford, all of them were super, super interesting, and it sucks that Dead Space will probably never see a revival again. However, EA shocked us because they released a trailer in March for Dead Space Remake. Oh, it's so beautiful. Oh, is that Isaac Clarke? Oh, is that the Necro? Oh, baby, yes, give me so much, Daddy! Yeah! Dead Space is back, motherfuckers! But we should keep a reasonable expectation on our heads. No, this isn't a brand new Dead Space. This is just the first game being remade and retold. And there's nothing wrong with that. we should be bringing old games like this back to tell modern stories with it, to see a different perspective of a universe that already existed. But I'm also keeping a fair expectation of it. This is a brand new studio that we had very little information on, and though they have worked on other games, I have not played those games, and I'm not going to. I'm going to be playing Dead Space when it comes out on January 27th. And I will be streaming it. I will be. And I'm going to be just as fair to it as I was with the original Dead Space. And I'm not going to let my nostalgia blind me to any faults or the good things about it. I want this Dead Space to stand on its own. Because Dead Space means a whole lot to me as an individual.
Because God has cursed me for my hubris, and my work is never finished.
Back in 2008, I got to experience Dead Space for the first time. And from 2008 to 2013, I was a Dead Space fan. Whether it be skulking through the Ishimura, fighting through Titan Station, or figuring out the secrets of the markers on Tau Volantis, I was always a fan of Dead Space. And I'm really happy now to see that it hasn't been forgotten, and that they're bringing it back. Though I'm wary, I'm still optimistic about it. And I hope to see you all on January 27th on my Twitch stream at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time to watch me relive my memories on the Ishimura. Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate this so much. Hey, thanks for watching my video. If you liked it, please consider subscribing. And as well, if you want to support me more, go to my Patreon and subscribe there as well. You get to see videos early, and as well get updated info on how videos are going and what we're working on. And as well, if you subscribe to the highest tier on my Patreon, you get an occasional sticker as well, as an added bonus. Again, thank you so much for watching. This is going to be a regular series from now on, one video a month, along with some other stuff in between. Hope to see you at the next one. Have a good day, everybody.